As always, there is a nice, calm recruiting weekend for the Florida Gators where nothing bad happened at all, right?
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. It's today, Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And nice calm weekend for the Florida Gators. They got to commit on Saturday. No, that isn't what happened, is it? The Florida Gators got Keon Young. So Hayes Fawcett and Keon Young on Saturday afternoon tweeted out or put on Instagram, committed to Florida, let's go Florida, let's do it, let's be awesome, all that stuff. And then very shortly after that, reports came out that Keon Young wasn't committed and that it was a miscommunication between the staff and Keon Young. And a miscommunication like that has happened before. I mean, how we saw it this past draft cycle. We saw it with Kendall Jackson in Miami. Kendall Jackson was committed to Florida, decommitted from Florida, committed to Miami, and the coaching staff was like, don't think so. And then he committed to Texas A&M and followed Sean Spencer there. And so we saw that with Kendall Jackson. That's kind of what we're seeing here with Keon Young, is that Florida had an offer for him. Keon Young, I guess, was like, okay, then I'm going to commit at this point. And he said he was committed, and then this is not a take by the Florida staff for some reason. I will say I think he should be. He is someone that it's weird too, because we talked about him on the show a couple of weeks ago, and this was not a player where we were like, oh, is he someone that Florida's coaching staff would take? This is someone that we were like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Like he should be here. So I don't get why he's not a take by this staff. Because when you look at it too, you have to think, if you're not taking the commitment from Keon Young, who is a consensus 4-star, and I get it. We say all the time, I'm going to take the evaluation of the guys that get paid millions of dollars to do this over those that don't. It's still weird because to not take that commitment this early in the process, because again, if you're committing this early in the process, it might be a little tough to keep, but once you're there, you just got to focus on hammering that home and keeping them there. And Florida is like, I'm good for whatever reason. But you'd think then that Florida has to feel either really bad about just this year's safety group in general, and they're like, there's very few that we want, or really good about where they stand on multiple 2025 players, right? But it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for Florida, because you turned away Keon Young. Is this a situation where, which again, like I'm sure that by the time National Signing Day comes back around, people will talk about it, and then we'll be like, all right, well, whatever. Like when he's on the field, people probably aren't going to talk about something like that frequently, right? So it's something that will be forgotten, but will it be forgotten by him? Is this a situation where Florida is going to be like, hey, no, like we still kind of want you, but you're just not a priority right now, so we'll put you on the back burner? Or is he going to be like, all right, well, that was embarrassing, I'm done? In which case, that could spurn Florida a little bit. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see how it plays out, especially if you can't flip Hylton Stubbs. Because Hylton Stubbs, of course, is a safety that we've talked about kind of frequently on this show multiple times with Brian Smith. And Florida was loosely considered the public favorite, or I guess they were considered the lean right now. Like they were thought of as being on top of the list. A visit to USC last week, and then he committed on Sunday, means that he's off the board in air quotes if you're listening. For Florida, I will say this. I don't think this commitment sticks to USC. That being said, it's still a bad look for Florida's coaching staff to not get the initial commitment when you were considered the favorite. Publicly considered the favorite. It's bad to get a kid to commit in March to not you when you're considered the favorite. Just want to throw that one out there. And me saying that I don't think the commitment sticks has nothing to do with who Hylton Stubbs is as a person. I do not know Hylton Stubbs as a person. It has nothing to even do with USC. I'm very not high on their coaching staff. The Anton Lynn, defensive coordinator, good hire, right? Took him from UCLA after they fired Alex Grinch, who is somehow just hanging on to Lincoln Riley's coattails all the way back from Oklahoma. But it has nothing to do with who Hylton Stubbs is or my thoughts of the USC coaching staff, which isn't high. It has more to do with you get one official visit to the school, right? You could take that, and that'll maybe reaffirm your commitment a bit, but you can't really, or if you can do it, it's impressive, but go take unofficials there all the time, right? It's really tough to maintain a cross-country commitment for 9 months. We talked about this with DJ Lagway of, you're from Texas, and it's a bit easier to get from Texas to Florida than it is to get from Florida to California consistently. But even then, you're not going to be there every single week. You're not going to be there all the time. And DJ Lagway was there a lot, to be fair. But again, it's not cross country. That's a big, big jump there. And so you're not going to be taking unofficials all the time. You are probably going to be taking unofficials to a lot of Florida-based schools, not just Florida, but Florida State, Central Florida, Miami. You're going to be going around because why not, right? Why not take that commitment? Why not take those trips, take those free visits, free money, whatever it is? Air quotes there. Yeah, sure. But I think that it's really hard to maintain a cross-country commitment for almost a year. Hell, a kid that commits to Florida in the state of Florida, 9 months out, I'm like, we'll see how it sticks. That's the same thing here with Hylton Stubbs, is that 9 months out is hard to stay committed to any school, let alone a cross-country school that could look a little rough around the edges defensively, in which you could, of course, argue, hey, like new year of a DC, we're trying to figure things out, whatever it may be. Lincoln Riley's never had a good defense, really, right? And I get it. It's weird to say like the head coach blaming that, but nature of the beast, right? Defenders aren't looking at Lincoln Riley and going, oh my God, I need to play defense for this guy. No, it's quarterbacks, receivers going, oh, I need to be involved in that. So defense, we'll see if that'll ever be sorted out really for Lincoln Riley. But it's just one of those things where really hard to maintain a commitment there. Again, like Florida has multiple commitments for the 2025 class where we look at it and we're like, all right, well, gonna be a little bit of a challenge to stick. Like Jalen Wiggins, gonna be visiting Florida State, gonna be visiting Miami, gonna be visiting a lot of schools. Things get rocky at certain points. But again, he's committed until he's not. And for Florida, they're not going to stop contacting Hylton Stubbs. Like that's the thing that we know with this coaching staff. Even if they lose a battle, they're going to keep pushing until they can't anymore. Look at Jameer Grimsley. Florida lost that battle. He committed to Alabama. Florida continued to recruit him. He maintained his commitment to Alabama. And then what happened? He hit the portal and jumped right to Florida. Once Nick Saban retired, jumped right to Florida. So this coaching staff's not going to stop trying for Hylton Stubbs. It's just a bad public perception thing to be considered the public favorite and then have him commit 9 months early to USC Not a great look, but again, at this point, commitments are considered the heavy leans at this point, in just the recruiting cycle and with what recruiting is nowadays. We are going to look at the basketball team for the rest of this show because, yeah, the season's over, heartbreaking fashion. But it was fun to watch. But first, we're going to get a quick word from a couple sponsors. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. And let me tell you, if Grand Canyon would have beaten Alabama, I would have been a very happy man. I would say that. Just want to throw that one out there. Whether you're betting on a big upset or on a one seed, I did bet on Kentucky minus 13.5 on Sunday, and that cashed not super easy. It looked like it was going to, but then it came crumbling down. It's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. It's $200 to use on the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, Championship. Just saying, you can do it all. Just visit fanduel.com/locked on and bet on college hoops until they cut those nets down. With passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy. And it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your #1 ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. And I do have to say that this basketball season was so fun to cover. Thank you all for anyone that tuned into a postcast or any part of the show where we talked about it. Thank you very much. It broke my heart at the end. It was just so upsetting because this was the thing we talked about on Friday's show where I was like, hey, I'm scared of this game with Alex Condon going up against Eddie Lampkin Jr. And Eddie Lampkin Jr. was doing 2K celebrations the whole game. That's what he was rocking the baby. He was doing the little goggles after he got a dime. Like, it was wild stuff. It was not fun. And we know referees, yeah, sure, whatever, it is what it is. But this team is one that's going through a bit of a transitional period where Zion Pullen, starting point guard, one of the best distributors in the country, out of eligibility. If I'm not mistaken, he's grad transfer. So offense really needed him to distribute at times this year. He was kind of like, yeah, Walter Clayton Jr. did all the cool things, but Zion Pullen was kind of the stabilizing factor of the offense where he could take over when Walter Clayton Jr. was out of the game. He can distribute and get the ball to guys that need to get the ball. And it was a whole thing. And he's gone. And Tyrese Samuel is another huge loss. Just his rebounding ability and his scoring threat will be missed. No matter how much I complained about his free throw shooting, it'll be missed in this offense. Because again, like Micah Handlockton, almost definitely coming back, right? Especially with the injury taking away his pre-draft process. And that was his sophomore year, as in this past season was his sophomore year. But Micah Handlockton gets the boards, doesn't really get putbacks like that. Tyrese Samuel does. Tyrese Samuel works inside more consistently. He shoots the three every now and then. So I will miss Tyrese Samuel's scoring ability, but those are the only on-court contributors that are definitely gone. And then you have to talk about Walter Clayton Jr. because Walter Clayton Jr. can come back to Gainesville. He can go to the draft. Obviously, as every player that's been in college for a year can go to the draft. In my opinion, Walter Clayton Jr. should return. Like, he ended on the highest of high notes with a great game against Colorado. Just shot the lights out, especially like the deep three to tie it at 100 late in the game was insane, right? And he deserves all the credit for that. He can come back. He should come back, in my opinion. He can improve his stock, though, by improving defensively. He can improve his stock by improving his ball security, because he was one where there were quite a few times he just had awful, untimely turnovers. And I do mean awful turnovers, whether we're talking about the inbound. There was a turnover at the end of the game against, was it Texas A&M in the SEC championship, where it's like, what the hell are you doing? And it was just wild stuff like that would just constantly kind of snake bite him in pretty significant times. He had a turnover rate of 16.3%. And Todd Golden said, hey, you don't want that to be above 16%. So rough stuff there. You can look at him as more of, hopefully next year, more of that distributing role would obviously help him improve his stock. Because right now he's your leading scorer. He's a pure scorer. He's just a bucket at any given time. But he can improve his stock. Like I think what will happen with Walter Clayton Jr. is he'll declare for the draft, get his feedback, and return. Like we see that happen every year with college basketball players. Like we saw that happen with like Colin Castleton in Florida. He did that his second to last year. He entered the draft after, and then he was like, okay, never mind. Don't like that feedback, and came back. And you could see that happen with Walter Clayton Jr. This year, where again, can declare. I'd imagine they'd tell him, hey, defense could use some work. Hey, ball handling ability can use some work. Hey, maybe, just maybe turn the ball over a little bit less. And then you're looking at someone that is more of a finished NBA product, because at this point, he's not. He's, again, a hell of a scorer, but he's not a complete player at this point. And so if he can be that, especially next year when he has to be the guy, then we're talking about that. Riley Kugel is another player that I feel like all of us pretty much unanimously are like, yeah, he's going to be in the portal. But like, he's got to be gone, because he should be. If you're asking me, he should be gone. I'm not saying that in the sense of like, oh, get out of here. I'm saying that in the sense of, why would he want to be here still? That's where I go with it. I go, why would he want to be here still? Because again, I keep going back to the Auburn game, the SEC championship. Him not playing the game before that against Texas A&M, I get it. You know, I do. I understand it. Like he played the Georgia game, he played Alabama, didn't play Texas A&M, didn't play Auburn. I keep looking at the Auburn game where the first time these two teams matched up, he scored 22 points in a big win over Auburn. And then you look at the SEC championship, Micah Handlogten gets injured 3 minutes into the game. Florida sticks with their 7-man rotation and doesn't put Riley Kugel in and keep it to the 8-man rotation that they usually go with. So I don't know. I wouldn't want to come back if I were him. And he played decently well in the Colorado game. If you're asking me, I think he played pretty well. Had a kind of clutch steal too. Some big moments. He's a big time player. Just you need to get the volatility down a bit. Denzel Aberdeen should be back. Again, he's another one who can declare for the draft. I mean, I know reason why he should. And I'm hoping that the portal is not an option for him. Slide into the starting lineup to replace Zion Pullen as just a guard. I'm not saying he's going to replicate what Zion Pullen can do. But the Florida Gators roster has quite a few needs going into the next season. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, a quick word from Nissan. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it farther than the rest, and just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. I'm going with the Iowa State Cyclones because I am a fan of theirs. Just obviously, Florida Gators fan more than anything else, but Iowa State football team has one of my favorite coaches in college football. And so their basketball team, by proxy, I support. They can only be defined as a pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch, and they've really created a lane for themselves, entering the tournament as one of the hottest teams in the country. I mean, you look at the Pac-12, or the Big 12 championship, the way that they dismantled Houston twice this season, beat Houston handedly. The last time in the Big 12 championship or the Big 12 tournament was a whooping. Throw that one out there. They have a date with Illinois this Thursday in the Sweet 16, and yeah, it's going to be one hell of a game. I'm looking forward to it. Bracket implications? Just saying. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure at shopnissanusa.com. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. To wrap up today's show, we're talking about what the Florida Gators basketball team needs, because we talked about losing Zion Poole and Tyrese Samuel as the only guaranteed losses, and most of us assume Riley Kugel will be gone. Todd Golden loves running his 8-man rotation. Maybe at some point he'll expand upon that. He is a Bruce Pearl disciple. Bruce Pearl runs 10-man rotations, but maybe if Todd Golden feels better about the roster strength, he'll go 10-man, but let's assume going at least 8-man rotation for 2025. You can assume Walter Clayton Jr. will be back, because again, even if he does declare, I'm expecting him back. So Walter Clayton Jr., Denzel Aberdeen, Will Richard, Micah Hanlogton, Alex Condon, Thomas Huck. I would assume those 6 are definitely going to play in this rotation, right? That leaves 2 spots available if you don't keep Riley Kugel. 1 spot if you do convince him to come back. Again, assuming that we're sticking with an 8-man rotation that we saw from the Florida Gators in 2023-2024 season. Now, the 2024-2025 season, we'll see if it's more, less, whatever it is. I think that when you're looking at what Florida should be doing, and I mean, we are talking about Todd Golden here. Portal God Todd probably going to look for an experienced ball handler, distributor in the portal, the same way that he found someone like Zion Pullen. Like, he brought in Walter Clayton Jr. and he's like, hey, you're going to be scoring. Zion Pullen, run the offense. I would think that he's looking for someone similar to that, unless he does think Denzel Aberdeen can do that, or if he wants Walter Clayton Jr. to slide into that role, or if he's going to shift philosophies a little bit and go, hey, we're going to keep Walter Clayton Jr. as just the main point guard, Denzel Aberdeen on-ball defender. You're basically going to be like a 3-and-D kind of guy. Will Richard, Micah Hanlogton, Alex Condon. That's our starting 5, and we're going to roll with that. Could be, right? I would think that he's also going to look for another off-ball scorer, basically a 3-and-D wing, probably like a 2 to 3. That'd be my expectation, and also probably a depth big. You have to feel pretty good about having Micah Hanlogton, Alex Condon, and Thomas Huck, right? Because all 3 of them are capable. Alex Condon, again, has much more room to grow, is what I'll say. As far as just post defense was a big thing that, again, was complaining about. It's really tough to overcome that. Overcome being bad at that. And it's just something where he's a football player learning an Australian rules football player learning how to play basketball. That's something where as he gets older, he's going to improve. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. Aggressive with contesting shots and blocking shots. He fouls a lot. And that's not just an officials thing if he typically fouls a lot. Would like to see him work on a little bit of a 3-point game, because I'm assuming he's going to be in the starting lineup with Micah Hanlogton next year. And then he'll go to center with Thomas Huck playing more power forward. And then Micah Hanlogton comes back in. Thomas Huck stays at power forward while Alex Condon gets a little bit of rest. I would assume that'd be a bit of the rotation that we're looking at, which works for me, but you're probably going to want depth because you will have Micah Hanlogton I'm assuming he's going to be back. I'm assuming that Micah Hanlogton will be back, as in, I think he's coming back regardless, but will be healthy by then. I think that's fair to assume that he'll be healthy by then. It was a bone, 2 bones, but it wasn't like a torn ligament that really got him, which usually takes longer. So assuming he'll be healthy by then, but again, relatively quick turnaround in college basketball. So if he's healthy, then that'll probably we'll see. If not, then we'll probably see Alex Condon start with Thomas Huck at power forward. You're going to want depth, right? Especially if Micah Handlockton can't go. And sure, for 2024, the 2024 class, you have Olivier Roux, who's committed, committed, has not yet signed, but the 7'6" Canadian player. Think he's going to need to probably get more used to the college basketball game. And if we're going to be slotting in immediate minutes, it's tough to do. Granted, you could do some stuff just at that size. Be like, hey man, just hands up and just play like that. And it makes a lot of sense to suggest that. But there's still a learning curve here. You also do have a 2024 signee in Isaiah Brown, who's more of a shooting guard. And according to his max prep page, averaged over 15 points per game in back-to-back seasons. Most of his damage comes from inside the three-point line. I don't know if that's just a volume thing, if that's just how the offense worked, or if that's just what kind of player he is. But it'll be interesting to see how Todd Golden works with that approach because again, Isaiah Brown, most of his work inside inside 3-point line. And Todd Golden extremely values the 3-point shot and around the rim twos as well. But being able to do both makes his team a hell of a lot more dangerous. So there's a couple of spots available. And again, Todd Golden has built this team through the transfer portal. I'd be stunned if he wasn't at least making some kind of move or some kind of moves to contribute to just further building this team. And again, I think the main one that you're going to see, or the main additions that you'll see, would be experienced ball handler and a big that can attack the boards. Because we could talk about off-ball shooters, but that's something that Florida can find and has depth there, where depth bigs. And yes, there are some guys, but they haven't played. They didn't play when Micah Handlockton got hurt. I'm not going to assume anybody's going to play. And if you have a chance to add a starter quality guy in the portal, I would assume Todd Golden's going to do that, given his tendency to attack the transfer portal. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow. Talk more Florida Gators football the whole show tomorrow. Don't worry about that. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Giants Country and NFL 33, and I will see you all next time.